echoing your frustrations, one call at a time.
It's like everything's going to hell in a handbasket.
55 KRC, the talk station.
.505 55 KRC, the talk station. Friday Eve. And a very happy one to you. Brian Thomas here, glad to be. Joe Strecker is not here. Got Taryn in today. Good to see you, Taryn, as always. Always appreciate when Taryn fills in for Joe. Taryn's the only other person who's had to do the job. Joe Strecker, I think, got an involvement with his kids today, last day of school or some kind of thing like that. So good. Have a good day, Joe. I'm certain he is not awake and listening right now. Would you be if you got to sleep in a day? I mean, come on, it's your day off. Phone number, if you want to talk about anything, maybe... Excuse me, Greg Gianforte. Maybe you got something to say about that one. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, 800-823-TALK. Nationally trending, of course, Greg Gianforte. This is why maybe early voting's not a good idea. Got a bit of a problem yesterday. The interesting part about this, over half of the estimated total ballots in this election, it is Montana's sole contested special House election seat. Over half the estimated ballots have already been returned. Hey, you never know until that's why I always say never name a street after someone until they're dead. That's what happened to Pete Rose. It does happen. So anyhow, Republican candidate, it was a hotly contested special election, has been charged with assaulting a journalist. Happened yesterday evening in Bozeman on the eve of the vote. The attack brought police officers to the event and sent one reporter to the hospital for x-rays. In a statement, the Office of Gallatin County Sheriff Brian Gutkin said that there was enough evidence to charge candidate Greg Gianforte with misdemeanor assault, not felony assault. Misdemeanor assault. Gianforte, the Republican candidate, scheduled to appear in court before June 7th. Interesting development. Closely watched for sort of has Donald Trump done something to tarnish the Republican Party such that a Republican leading candidate was going to get unseated by the Democrat? Three of the state's largest newspapers, the Billings Gazette, the Missoulian, and the Helena Independent Record. I think Joe actually gets a subscription to the Helena Independent Record. Rescinded their endorsement for Mr. Gianforte, who is a favorite. Now, wondering, though, whether Democrat Rob Quist is going to end up winning again. This may have changed the hearts and minds of some people who haven't yet voted. They may now want to vote for the Democrat. Independent of anything Donald Trump did, maybe they're looking at Mr. Gianforte as a bit of a loose cannon since he went all, ballistic on a reporter. Half the estimated total votes have already been cast. Ben Jacobs, a reporter for The Guardian, said it happened during an interview at Mr. Gianforte's campaign headquarters. Jacobs said Gianforte body slammed him when he was pressed on a question about the Republicans' health care bill. Fox News television crew was there, and they saw the encounter, and, of course, they posted the video on the network website. One of Fox journalists described Gianforte as punching the reporter. According to the news account, as Gianforte moved on top of Jacobs, he began yelling something to the effect that, "I'm sick and tired of this." Jacobs said Gianforte became agitated when he was asked about the Congressional Budget Office's new fiscal assessment of the Republicans' version of the Obamacare bill. I'll get to that in a minute. It depends on how you read the CBO report. And I know if you're listening right now, you already know 23 million people are going to die. There's a little more to that figure than meets the eye. I understand. It's just like saying Russians, Donald Trump, Russians. There's this knee-jerk reaction. Republican health care bill, 23 million people uninsured. But what does that mean? We'll talk about that in a bit. But this is the question that Mr. Gianforte is being asked, and apparently he's tired of being asked for it. He initially sidesteps the question. This is according to an audio recorded of the episode, suggesting the reporter speak to his spokesman. But then Jacobs, the reporter from The Guardian, persisted. And that's when Gianforte, will say, lost his composure, saying, "I am sick and tired of you guys." And that's on the recording, and after which you hear the sounds of a physical struggle followed by a crash. That would be Mr. Jacobs' body hitting the ground. Gianforte yells, "The last time you came here, you did the same thing. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here." Jacobs responds, "You just body slammed me and broke my glasses." Again, Gianforte screams, "Get the hell out of here." Upon that point, after Jacobs says he'd be reporting the episode to the authorities, the tape ends. In a statement, Gianforte's spokesman, how'd you like to be that guy, offered a slightly different version of events, and this is what Shane Scanlon had to say. After asking Jacobs to lower the recorder, Greg then attempted to grab the phone that was pushed in his face. Jacobs grabbed Greg's wrist and spun away. Greg pushed them both to the ground. Gianforte is not heard on the recording requesting that Mr. Jacobs lower the recorder, however, so the recording differs slightly from the spokesman's account of the events. Another witness from BuzzFeed, Alex Levinson, said Ben walked into the room where local TV crews were set up for an interview with Gianforte. All of a sudden, I hear a giant crash and saw Ben's feet fly in the air as he hit the floor. Witnesses said Gianforte never did speak at his own event, stood behind closed doors, and after leaving, leaving after the police officers arrived, well before the gathering was supposed to conclude. Now, what kind of charges does Mr. Gianforte face? Well, this misdemeanor charge of assault, $500 fine, or 6 months in jail, or both. Now, over in Missoula, Montana, Mr. Quist, the Democratic nominee, seemed to be taken by surprise when asked about the episode. Well, that's not really for me to talk about. I think that's more a matter for law enforcement. But the initial begging off on an opportunity to comment was short-lived, of course. They quickly seized on the episode, the House Democratic campaign, calling Mr. Gianforte to immediately withdraw from the race. And that's obviously what Quist should have said in the first instance. He did what? He assaulted a reporter? He threw him to the ground? That guy should withdraw from the race. Quist taking the high road at the outset. Then he gets the talking points from his own party telling him how he should react. And from that point forward, it's get the hell out of the race. Newspapers quickly, as I mentioned, withdrew their endorsements. Billings Gazette editorial board released a blistering statement saying that they were at a loss of words. We will not stand by that kind of violence, period, the Gazette said. Early in a rally on Wednesday, Gianforte spoke briefly with a reporter between greeting supporters. He turned to the spokesman when approached, but he did respond with a question about the role of President Trump in the race. And didn't think it was a very important role. Probably won't be now. Mr. Gianforte, I believe, has made his own bed, and he will now be lying in it. I think it'll be an actual... I know the Democrats probably are all ginned up now, thinking that this is going to give them a win. Maybe Quist a win now. Now, stepping back from my comments and observations about early voting, some people may be living with regret. Can I get that vote back? I think it'll be more comical if Gianforte ends up winning this, maybe by a large margin or something, and I can only hope that will happen. I'm not defending Mr. Gianforte's actions. I just like to think, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed here, that maybe in Montana, there's a different kind of breed of people in Montana. Maybe in Montana, that's less of an issue, Gianforte slamming a guy to the ground than than Donald Trump is a problem. So we'll see. We will see. Funny, though, coming in at number one in the nation. Coming in at number two, Sessions' failure to disclose meetings with the Russians. And I'm actually thinking about replaying my interview or my discussion with Judge Anna Napolitano from yesterday, because I got to be honest with you, after listening to Judge Anna Napolitano and reading his op-ed piece today from the Freedom Files, Is President Trump in Trouble? The out-loud sort of rhetorical question that is the caption of the article by Judge Anna Napolitano today, he did sound a little concerned. Now, Judge is not a huge Trump fan. But the law is the law. And to the extent that some of these allegations concerning Trump's alleged interference with the Justice Department and the NSA and asking those people to beg off investigations, to the extent that that actually turns out to be true, and there isn't necessarily a whole lot of details on that yet in terms of facts, evidence, the Don could be in some trouble, according to Napolitano. So we got that trending nationally as well. Also coming up, don't go away, two different opinion polls, two different polls and tracking polls out, and kind of two different results. Donald's either doing okay or he is in trouble. First, a word for Lone One Mortgage. Suzette Lowe's waiting for your call. She always is. That's what her job is, to take your phone calls. And going on 520 right now, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Brian Thomas here, and I am glad to be here. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday Eve. Great show today. Appreciate Joe Strecker lining up, even though he took a day off vacation. Got Taryn covering for Joseph, but before Joe went off to the vacation land, he has lined up Dr. Lisa Mannix. She's the Butler County coroner and wants to talk to you about the heroin epidemic, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to Dr. Mannix about that. And that, it just, saw some guy the other day snorting heroin, snorting it in the car, running over people, And that's what worries me. I keep thinking that, and I'm going to talk to her about this, because how does one end up on heroin? Okay, let's review. You are an opioid addict. Your doctor has been prescribing you opioids for pain medication. You get regular prescriptions, and now your prescriptions have been cut off or something. Maybe you've been on opioids buying from your local street pharmacist. I don't know. Opioid addiction is a real problem. The cost of opioids more expensive on the street than heroin. Heroin's a cheap substitute for it. Or you got somebody that's just willing to take a try, right? Oh, let's just snort a little bit. Let's smoke a little bit, because you don't have to inject it. That's a big step. Do you know anybody that just goes straight to an injectable without going through some interim step with a drug? I mean, to the extent there's a way. Injections, most people hate them. But you can snort it, and you can smoke it. And I'm certain, and this is what bothers me so much, given, and I don't know, but if you talk to your children, my daughter is a junior in college, but she still has friends in the Loveland area. Both my children graduated from Loveland High School, and she has reports that they are actually selling heroin in the school there. High school students. I don't know what kind of drugs you had around your high school. When I was in high school, no one even uttered the word heroin unless it was in health class. And you're talking about junkies on the streets in New York. You know what I'm saying? The old school kind of how you remember junkies shuffling down the street, waiting for my man. That's not the case anymore. So anyway, Dr. Lisa Mannix on that. So where are they coming from? Where is the education to know that, yes, you can snort this stuff and you can be addicted or drop dead just from one little snort? Anyway, a couple of new tracking polls out, and depends on which one you want to look at. If you look at Rasmussen, the daily presidential tracking poll yesterday shows 48% of likely voters approve of Trump's job performance, 52% disapprove. That includes 31% who strongly approve of the way he's performing, 42% who strongly disapprove. That gives him a approval index of -11. Over to Fox News, problem nationwide. Last month took a toll on the president's ratings. This new Fox poll finds only 40% of voters approve Trump's job, down from 45% last month. Disapproval is up 5 points to 53%, which mirrors the figure from Rasmussen. Some of the drop in approval ratings comes from Republicans. 81% approve of the president. Approval had previously been between 84 and 87%. Approval among whites without college degree, who, of course, backed him. 66% of that group backed him. It went from 62% last month to now a 53% approval rating. That's Donald Trump's base right there. Independents, only 34% approve. It used to be 42% in April. Vice President Pence, he has a separate approval rating. It's also gone down. 42% of voters approve of his job performance. That was 50% in April. Disapproval is up 10 points to 43%. And I got to step back. What the hell's Mike Pence done? Is this obviously he some Trump is sticking to him, but I don't know that Mike Pence has really done anything to deserve a 10% increase in disapproval rating. Maybe it's because he hasn't done enough. I don't know. Where's Mike Pence, and how come he hasn't grabbed Donald Trump by the neck and throttled him a little bit, pulled a Gianforte on him and told him to put his dang Twitter feed down? Something like that. I don't know. It's possible. Trump voters. the voters, people who actually voted for Trump. They believe that, this is turbulence and these tough times are really only about what change is like. 90% of the people say the president is doing what they elected him to do, which is shake up Washington. I would admit he's shaking up Washington, and he's certainly not a politician, but I do really, truly wish he was presidential, more presidential. 84% of Republicans agree with that. Sort of, this is what he was elected to do, and all of those voting for Hillary Clinton think that the administration is just completely falling apart. 92% of the Hillary Clinton voters think it's in a complete tailspin. All right, 44% of working class folks oppose the GOP health care bill. 50% don't think he'll build a wall. I think more and more people are going to start to come to that conclusion. If you look at the budget, not a whole lot of money in it for a wall. And a growing number of voters think Russian hackers did, in fact, help Trump win the election. 44% think the Russians helped. That was up from 32% in November. And that means that your mainstream media and this relentless Russia, Trump, Russia, and it doesn't never say anything. The dots are never connected. And we always have to step back, you and I do, because we like to look at this in reality and say, of course the Russians tried to interfere with the election. That's what's in their best interest. The big question is whether Trump worked with them. That's a whole different thing. We know they interfered. That's what they do. Did Trump work with them? Different question, but the whole Trump, Russia is now having, of course, a ripple effect. People who voted for Trump now are starting to think that the Russians helped collude. So, fighting the mainstream media and its narrative is a very difficult thing. I just wish more people would pay attention to what they're saying, because what they're saying quite often isn't very much. 526, 55 KRCD Talk Station, local stories, including, I guess, Ray Tenzing wants his case dismissed. Don't know that that's going to happen. We'll get to that. And phone calls. If you want to make a comment, love to hear from you. 749-5500, 800-823-TALK. First, let me tell you about the Visiting Nurse Association, because if you want to stay in your home and not go to a long-term care facility like 5:30, 55 KRCD Talk Station. A very happy Thursday to you. Call Friday Eve, if you will. In addition to Dr. Lisa Mannix, the Butler County Coroner, coming up at 7:05. Jack Atherton. He's going to offer commentary at 7:40. Jack is a very smart guy, and I always appreciate hearing what he has to say. Brilliant man. And he'll be calling in at 7:40. And we have officers Ron Hughley and Mandy Vineyard from the Cincinnati Police Department. Now, you've heard about the new budget. You know about Cranley's budget or City Manager Black's budget, and in the future there aren't going to be any recruit classes, at least for a while. They have these giant holes they need to fill in the local budget. They are doing a new recruiting class. It's like the last one for we don't know how long. If you want a job as a Cincinnati police officer, officers Hughley and Vineyard will be here at 8:05 to tell you all about that. Your last opportunity for a while. And tomorrow is going to be great. The guys that wrote the book on the Beverly Hills Supper Club tragedy will be back. They got some new updated information. And I'm telling you, that was a mob. That was not aluminum wiring, Stan Chesley. That was a mob burn down. Wait till if you read that book, you cannot come away with any other conclusion that was the most corrupt fire investigation, politically motivated cover-up involving gangsters and mobsters. It's crazy. Anyway, speaking of Stan Chesley, why not just lead off with this local story? Because some protesters are a little angry with him. They gathered outside the Hamilton County Courthouse yesterday to protest Stan Chesley. Characterized as a retired attorney here in this article, they've accused him of cheating him out of their settlement. Over a dozen people stood outside the courthouse chanting, "We want justice," holding signs reading, "Stan Chesley is not above the law." Once prominent, he's now known as the master of disaster for his major success in getting billions for his client. In 2016, lost an appeal, ordered to pay a portion of the $42 million owed in a lawsuit over a popular weight loss drug, Fen-Phen. That's after a lower Kentucky court found he breached his fiduciary duty to his clients. Those clients turned protesters now frustrated because they're saying it's taking too long to receive their settlements. One protester said she suffered from many illnesses, including having primary pulmonary hypertension disease from the drug Fen-Phen, a pacemaker, stents in her heart, and leaking valve. That's the kind of thing the damages are supposed to pay for and cover you for, compensate you for. She said she needs that settlement money to take care of herself and her family since she and her husband, who's battling cancer, are unable to work. Parenthetically, Stan Chesley disbarred in 2013. Two Claremont County men harbored a 14-year-old girl in their apartment and coerced her into engaging in sex acts so they could create child pornography. We got an award to give out, I guess, this morning. You got the biggest douche of the universe award queued up there, Taryn. I don't know if you know where that button is. We're going to have to give it out to the man Eric Zinn Ho, 25, and Brian Matthew Artero, 27. Indicted in federal court on charges of conspiracy to sex traffic children and conspiracy to produce child porn. Teen initially reported missing from Indiana, found in their Union Township apartment. Otero and Ho, arrested May 4th, remain in custody. They're scheduled to be arraigned in the U.S. District Court on Wednesday. According to police, at the time of the arrest, the girl had been missing for 4 days. When she was found at the East Point Apartments in Union Township, Ho admitted to engaging in sexual conduct with the girl while inflicting physical pain, and that Artero watched. Artero facing rape charges in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It's a completely separate incident. That one, conspiracy to sex traffic children, a crime punishable by life in prison. Conspiracy to produce child porn carries a mandatory minimum of 15 years in prison, up to 30 years. And we'll see what the trial results in. They're alleged at this point. And over to the Ray Tenzing trial. This one's trending number one locally. Attorneys for Ray Tenzing asking judge to dismiss his case on the eve of the murder trial, claiming Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Dieters violated a gag order and biased potential jurors by speaking to local news, WCPO's Tanya O'Rourke. Tenzing's defense filed a motion yesterday, 2 hours after CPO posted a story in which Dieters spoke about the case, suggesting that Judge Leslie Gidd could add lesser charges to the original charges of murder and voluntary manslaughter. He said, "I suspect she will." Tenzing testified he feared for his life when Sammy DuBose tried to drive away during the 2015 traffic stop. Prosecutions argued that he had not been in danger at the moment he shot DuBose. Case, of course, attracted national attention, and there's a high degree of tension here locally. In light of the unprecedented and extensive media coverage, this protective order is, it was issued by the judge. A protective order, and that's the basis for the motion, that Dieters should not have been talking to WCPO because of the gag order. Anyhow, former Hamilton County Judge Norbert Nadel said last night that he would be shocked if the case were thrown out based upon the defense's motive. He said what Dieters said was pretty innocuous. And I think most of the things that he said have already been said in the media anyway. If it happens, it will be something that I haven't seen anywhere in all my decades of being a judge and my legal experience. Having said that, Nadel said he believed the interview could become a question jurors are asked during their initial examination. That would be the voir dire where you try to figure out if there's juror bias. 5:36 right now, 55 Carries the Talk Station. Got a stack of stupid coming up. But first, let me tell you about Goodwill. What a wonderful charity Goodwill is. A local focus on folks with disabilities and homeless veterans. And what the focus is to get those people job training. It is 5:41 going on to 55 KRC Talk Station. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday. Call it Friday Eve, if you will. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone or 800-823-TALK. And without phone calls, we're going to go right to the stack of stupid. And we turn to Russia, where an Orthodox bishop is under scrutiny this week after he accepted a gift of a luxurious Toyota Land Cruiser four-wheel drive valued at $106,500. They're supposed to take a vow of poverty, apparently. And in order to justify keeping the Toyota Land Cruiser, valued at $106,500, he said Jesus would have done the same thing. What would Jesus do? Keep the Land Cruiser. Representative of the Archdiocese, located a couple hundred miles southwest of Moscow, argued that Bishop Nektari's decision to keep the gift was Christ-like. Moscow Times reporting his explanation. And here it is. You know, it sounds to me like maybe he's been talking to John Kasich, mixing the religion with what politics and things like that. What would Jesus do? Jesus would take money from you, whether you wanted him to or not, and give it to people for health care insurance. That's John Kasich's view of religion. And this bishop's view of religion, in which, Christ, of course, told people to give up their material possessions and follow him and take vow of poverty, that kind of thing. This is what he had to say. Jesus Christ himself wore expensive clothes gifted to him, shall we say, by people who celebrated him. Which chapter is that in the Bible? I didn't realize. Maybe we've got video of this, Jesus wearing really expensive clothes gifted to him. I mean, maybe the internet, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true, right, Taryn? Why don't you look for that? See if you can find video of Jesus wearing expensive clothes. Anyhow, Patriarch Kirill of Moscow, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, had previously urged members to refuse gifts like luxury cars, saying that the practice discredits the church. Why was he given the car? Apparently given to him by local agricultural businesses that wanted to thank him for visiting remote villages in his diocese during inclement weather. It's his job. That's what priests are supposed to do. Minister to folks. They're supposed to travel about and do that. I had an interesting conversation with a member of the clergy the other day. Do priests, rabbis, members of clergy charge you to marry them? If you're a member of the church, do you have to pay that guy? I've heard that quite often they do exact a fee from you, even though you're a member of the church. You're getting married in their church and they're going to charge you? Isn't that what the church is for? Isn't that why you belong there? Isn't that guy or gal's job, as the case may be? Why would you have to pay him more? This argument made to me by a member of the clergy that I was talking to. A real nice guy. He said, nothing frustrates you more than clergy going out and making a lot of extra money on the side, doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, which is ministering to people and marrying people. 545, 55 KRCD Talk Station. More stupid coming up. That was a word for USA Insulation. Had Steve from USA Insulation. Oh, no, it was actually Robert. Steve's on the commercials. Robert was in from USA Insulation. I'm talking about the end of the $99 a month interest-free, which is ending. 550, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Phone number, if you care to make a comment, 749-5500, 800-823-TALK, or pound 550 if you're on an AT&T phone. I made that comment about the priest. And I got Alan on the phone with a follow-up. Alan, happy Thursday. Welcome to the morning show.
Thanks. Hey, I was in Honduras and on a mission trip, and the missionary there, he had to travel like the back roads, and the roads were terrible, and he couldn't get around without an all-terrain vehicle, and he would, give rides to everybody along the way. I mean, his vehicle would have like 20 people on it by the time we would get to where we were going, and an incorrect perspective is being lent to this, and maybe
it's possible.
I don't know the Land Rover.
It's possible. Hey, but you know what? His justification was that Jesus was given all kinds of expensive clothes, and that obviously Jesus would have taken the vehicle too. I don't know. That's an appropriate interpretation of Christianity. I just thought it was rather funny, and it just reminded me more of the mention I made about clergy actually charging people in their own church to perform weddings and keeping the money themselves. This was the ultimate point I didn't make on that. It's him keeping the vehicle for himself and not sort of saying, no, it's a church vehicle for everyone's use, kind of the way you're suggesting. The money often paid to clergy for wedding people, even members of their own community, is put into their personal pocket, not given to the church. And this is information I wasn't aware. Again, a member of clergy told me about how this goes on all the time, and I just wanted to raise it and use that little article as a vehicle to raise that and bring that to the attention, just sort of as an open, is that ethical type of question, because I obviously don't think it is. You get a full salary from the church. That's one of your jobs as a clergy. Period. End of story. Don't go charging people extra for it. Thank you, Alan. Good to hear from you, my friend. And here's one that blew my mind, and you may have something to say about this because I have been on a rail lately against political correctness, and now we're putting people out of business over cultural appropriation, and I believe this is Seattle, if I recall correctly. Portland, Oregon. Callie Wilgus and Liz Conley owned, and I underscore past tense, owned Portland's pop-up shop. It was called Kook's Burritos. They wanted to sell great burritos. Now, maybe it was their passion. They went on a trip to Puerto Nuevo, Mexico. And there, in Puerto Nuevo, Mexico, they talked to the local tortilla ladies and brought recipes back with them to the United States. This apparently was a bad thing. It ended up in Kook's Burritos having to shut down because the women are white. They were accused of cultural appropriation by an internet mob. And I can't read the exact quote because it's FCC non-compliant, but one woman wrote in the comments section, "Now that you all boldly and pretty blanking unapologetically stole the basis of these women's livelihoods, you can make their exact same products so that other white people don't have to be inconvenienced dealing with a pesky brown middle woman getting in the way." Close quote. What? The woman they talked to lived in blanking Puerto Nuevo, Mexico. How likely is it that those women were going to be selling anything in Portland, blanking, Oregon? Cultural appropriation. Woman became the subject of editorials, and, of course, social media was fanned the flames with an article from some stupid site called Mike.com. Quote, "These white cooks bragged about stealing recipes from Mexico to start a Portland business." Close quote. No, they didn't. They were cooks discussing recipes. If those were family-valued recipes in Puerto Nuevo, Mexico, I bet the little tortilla ladies wouldn't have bothered sharing it with them. They probably wanted to spread the beauty of their culture to the white women who didn't necessarily appreciate how to make a good burrito. Not the way they make them in Puerto Nuevo, anyway. Soon after the controversy, and this is where it gets worse, to the extent that could, and, folks, coming to a theater near you. Now, Taryn, you're a black man. Don't know if you like soul food. I love it. I grew up on it. My grandma, and you can call it soul food. I call it Southern. You know what I mean? Greens, neck bones, all that. I love it. I can make it. I can cook it. I could open with recipes that my grandmother taught me and that my mom taught me. I probably could open I could call it a Southern restaurant, but somebody could accuse me of cultural appropriation because I'm making soul food. This is how bad it gets, and that's exactly what's going on here. After this controversy, a list of white-owned appropriative businesses started circulating, featuring some of Portland's top restaurants. The list suggested that the nearest alternatives to the white-owned businesses. In other words, here's a people of color. They call it POC version. Don't go to the white-owned business. Go to the people of color version. So, white ladies learn how to make burritos while on vacation. They're now, cultural appropriators, and as this article points out, comparable to Hernan Cortez. We have rounded the bend. Now, coming up, I want to replay Judge Anna Napolitano from yesterday because you Trump supporters need to hear this. Judge left me a little worried toward the end of the conversation, so I hope you can stick around. We'll do that coming up. We'll take more phone calls, too. 749-5500, pound 550 AT&T phone, or 800-823-TALK.
Listen to Sean Hannity online or on your phone at 55krc.com, an iHeart radio station.
Hey, 605, 55KRCD Talk Station, and a very happy Thursday to you. Friday Eve. Brian Thomas here, glad to be. And looking forward to the next hour, Dr. Lisa Mannix, Butler County Coroner, talking about the heroin epidemic. Of course, Jack Atherton at 7:40 with his commentary, always wonderful. And officers Ron Hughley and Mandy Vineyard going to be talking to you about the possibility of becoming a Cincinnati police officer. Yes, there is another recruit class. Yesterday on the 55 KRC Morning Show, since this is a news story trending this morning, about alleged revelations that Russian officials were interested in influencing U.S. elections. We all know that was actually happening. But the New York Times reporting that the suggestions of Russian officials actually made an attempt to influence Trump aides. But they admit in the article, even though it sounds very concerning and it sounds like all this happened, that they're unclear whether Russian officials actually tried to influence, and these aides were Mr. Manafort and Mr. Flynn directly. So they say it's possible and that there was a suggestion that it was, but they have no evidence that it actually happened. And so that's all brewing behind the scenes. But Judge Anna Napolitano was on yesterday talking about some of Donald Trump's other problems insofar as Donald Trump asking members of the FBI and the NSA to bag off on this investigation, and that could present some problems. And I wanted to replay it because Judge Anna Napolitano didn't exactly end on a positive note. So without further ado, here's the judge. Taryn? We are not giving the benefit of that, at least right now. At least I know the Washington Post and other news outlets are not giving Donald Trump the benefit of that. In fact, now reporting that he made separate appeals to the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, as well as the Director of National Security Agency, Admiral Rogers, to have them publicly deny the existence of evidence of collusion. Now, we know, as you know, Judge, former FBI Director Comey came out and said there was an investigation into whether the Trump campaign or his minions colluded with the Russians to impact the election. Donald Trump, apparently has appealed to Coates and Rogers to say, please come out and say there's no evidence of that. Have I got that right, Judge?
I think you do have it right, and there is no denial from the White House, from Director Coates, or from Admiral Rogers about that. This, of course, is another a notch on the belt, if you will, of the obstruction of justice argument. So if I could frame it as Trump's detractors do, it would be he asked Comey to shut down the investigation of Mike Flynn and the Trump campaign. Comey said no. He then asked these two people who work in tandem with Comey. One runs all intelligence in the U.S., one runs the NSA. They said no. Now, it's interesting, Admiral Rogers saying no. The NSA is in the military.
Right.
Admiral Rogers is a four-star admiral. He has an absolute, inviolable duty to obey the
Commander-in-Chief.
The lawful orders of the Commander-in-Chief. And the only way he can refuse to obey them is by stating directly, indirectly, personally, or in a memo, the order is unlawful. We don't know what he said, but we know that he didn't obey the order.
Now, can I ask...
that does create an argument, certainly enough to warrant an investigation about whether the president was interfering with this investigation. Yeah. The other side of this is the concept of the unitary executive. The president is the chief law enforcement officer of the land. He's the chief executive of the federal government. He runs the executive branch. He's the only person in the executive branch who's answerable to the voters. Everybody in the executive branch works for him. If people don't like what he asks them to do, they should do it anyway, or they should resign and say why they're resigning. So you have two vastly different arguments about the way government should work. Can people under the president be independent of him, or is everybody in the executive branch subject to the president?
Well, it sounds like an employer-employee type relationship. I guess I'm I'm kind of trying to drill down to the legality of this. You have told my listeners and explained in very clear detail why it would be inappropriate, unlawful for Donald Trump to tell the FBI director to shut down an investigation. He can't do that. Is it the same to ask folks in the know to comment on whether there is evidence of collusion? Now, that's just a factual statement. Either there is or there isn't. And the word is that he asked them to come out and say there's no evidence of it. I would argue, presumably, because there isn't any evidence of it. What about that? Is there a distinction there that I'm making?
Well, he may have been asking them to utter a falsehood, which is not a crime, but which can seriously diminish your effectiveness in office.
True.
Because if you utter a falsehood at the president's command, kind of like if you create a narrative to fire the FBI director after the president has already decided to fire him, you lose street cred, as Rod Rosenstein did with the narrative we know he now created days after he was told the FBI director was going to be fired. So if Admiral Rogers had stated a known falsehood, I don't think at the command of the president, I don't think he could be fired. He could be disciplined in the military, but he would undermine his relationship with his colleagues, and the same with Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates. The flip side of this is these guys are not lawyers and they're not judges. They probably can't say definitively what evidence is. I am not a fan of John Brennan, but I thought he answered questions brilliantly yesterday. When he was asked if there is evidence, he said, I don't know. When he asked if he saw stuff that warranted being passed on, he said, absolutely. I'm not the one who decides if this is evidence.
That's the Justice Department.
I just came across communications between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and I passed it on to the people to whom I'm legally obliged to pass it on.
Okay, and this communication, this is where the rubber meets the road, in essence. Communications with the Trump campaign and the Russians. Everyone keeps saying, well, what is this, the Russians interfering with campaign? And everyone, I think, uniformly is in agreement that, no kidding, this is in the Russians' interest for them to tinker with the election in the same way that we use Radio Free Europe, or Barack Obama makes comments about the Israeli election or anything else. We do influence elections, or we try to, because it's in our national security interest, and I guess Russia felt the same way. The next step, though, is where the blurring starts coming in, because there's this, well, yes, the Russians interfered, but did the Trump campaign work with them? That
is the question. That is the essence of the investigation, and we don't know the answer to that.
If they did, I mean, and I just think about, like, for example, a form of Russian interference might be the spreading of an article or spreading of information. They obviously have access to the internet. They're very powerful, huge government, whatever. They're going to put information out there through news agencies, through the reporters, through their contacts in the Washington Post, whatever. Is that illegal in and of itself if the Trump campaign says, look, I got this piece of information about Hillary's, I don't know, whatever, here, have it?
I can't answer the question directly, but I can make a few observations.
Okay.
One can unwittingly become a foreign agent by assisting a foreign government to do what it does. One could enter into a conspiracy illegally with a foreign agent in order to undermine not the campaign, but the campaign of a particular person. So if the Trump campaign helped Russian hackers hack into Hillary's computers, or if the Trump campaign facilitated Russian involvement in planting stories among the press, they could unwittingly become foreign agents. That's not collusion. That is a conspiracy, and that would be worthy of investigation. The Russians do not wish us well. When President Trump brought Foreign Minister Lavrov and Ambassador Kislyak into his office, and they had a bunch of belly laughs and photo ops, these are two very, very dangerous people, particularly Kislyak, who is well known to the intelligence community as a very senior intelligence officer in the Russian intelligence services. And we know that something nefarious was going on because Vladimir Putin, President Putin, offered to release a transcript of what they discussed. Where would the transcript have come from? Somebody was wired.
Yes.
In the Oval Office. A Russian spy wired in the Oval Office taping the president and the other Russian spies. You think it would be an honest transcript, or you think it would be made to make the Russians look good? This is very, very dangerous stuff. The president, as much as I wish him well, is naive when it comes to dealing with dangerous people.
That is, I think, without question, based upon his actions, he does presume that just sitting down with people and just talking with them. I think it's kind of like FDR at Yalta. Yeah, just give me an opportunity to talk to Stalin. I'll work everything out, and we all know how that went down.
Right. The whole world would have been different if Harry Truman had gone. I'm not a fan of Truman, but I don't think he could have been cowed the way within weeks of death FDR was.
Well, Judge Anna Napolitan, before we part for the day, and we look forward to next Wednesday already, where, I guess, does this leave us? We're just the investigation continues. The reports will continue. We will.
Well, the president has hired personal lawyers.
Yep.
So he obviously is taking the advice of those who say the White House counsel cannot defend you, and it's going to get very serious. Bob Mueller is interviewing Jim Comey before he testifies in public to congressional committees. My column tomorrow is Donald Trump in hot water. I think you can guess what the answer will be, but the temperature keeps rising.
No question about it. And again, I wish the man well, too, and I would like to see him succeed. But the law is the law, and I believe in equal application of the law, Your Honor. I know you do as well. Looking forward to your column, sir, and I always look forward to this segment on the program more than any other part of the program during the week. And by the way, speaking of fun times, Bill Hemmer was here in studio on Monday, and your name, of course, came up. And
the handsome one, as I call him, capital H in handsome, capital O in one.
No doubt. He is, without question, has no peer. Thanks again, Judge Napolitano. Until next Wednesday, you have a fantastic week.
Man.
Enjoy your holiday. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, 800-823-TALK here to comment. Got more, including how to read a CBO analysis of the Republicans' health care bill. It's a little different than you think. First, Cullen Electric. Andrew Cullen was over at our listener lunch on Tuesday. Going on 622, 55 KRCD Talk Station. It is Friday Eve. Phone number here, 749-5500 or 800-823-TALK. If you care to make a comment, I was going to dive onto the CBO scoring of the health bill, but I saw this new number 2 trending story. After Greg Gianforte had a big problem in the Montana elections, had a bit of a meltdown the other day, went ballistic on a reporter and grabbed him by the throat and body slammed. And that's a Republican running against a guy named Quist. The funniest aspect of this story is voting is today. This happened yesterday, and all reports are that based upon the trends, how many people ultimately vote in these elections, already half of the votes have been turned in early voting. So it makes a strong statement against early voting because bad things can happen right up to the very end. You never know what's going to happen. Heck, an indictment can come out. Anthony Weiner's laptop could be found with confidential documents belonging to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. You never know what's going to happen right before the election. So early voting can be a problem. Anyway, I did want to mention this because the UK is a little upset with us and concerned with this Manchester bombing. They have stopped sharing information on the suicide bombing with the United States. That's according to a British counterterrorism source. They explained this to Reuters. It's because the U.S. media has risked hindering their investigation through leaks. Of course, they're hunting for the possible bomb maker after that British-born Salman Abedi killed himself and killed 22 people at the same time. The decision to stop sharing this information with U.S. agencies was an extraordinary step, as Britain, of course, sees the United States as its closest ally on security and intelligence. According to the counterterrorism source, he said that this is until such time as we have assurances that no further unauthorized disclosures will occur. Manchester police said that Abadi was part of a network. The media have reported that the authorities suspect he received help constructing the bomb and planning the attack. Police chiefs made it clear they're furious about the publication of confidential material in the United States media, including. This makes me scratch my head. I mean, this is Reuters reporting, so, take it with whatever grain you think is necessary. But bomb site photographs that were published in the New York Times, the bomb site was a public venue. I mean, you could get Google Earth and publish bomb site information. That is not confidential. Anybody with a Google Earth can pull that stuff up, I suppose. Anyhow, they said those leaks were undermined relationships with trusted security allies. A national counterterrorism policing spokesman said in a statement, this damage is even greater when it involves unauthorized disclosure of potential evidence in the middle of major counterterrorism investigation. It suggested that Prime Minister Theresa May will raise this issue with Trump when she meets him at the NATO summit in Brussels later today. Now, the pictures published by the Times include remains of the bomb and the rucksack carried by the suicide bomber, and they did show bloodstains amid the wreckage. Financial Times reported that images are available across restricted access encrypted special information database and used by government, ordnance, and explosive experts in about 20 countries with Britain. It said the database was built around longstanding U.S.-British systems. So maybe there's a little bit more to the photographs that were published anyway, but tensions over the Manchester bombing, leaks, U.S. media leaks. That's our free press for you. Terrible, terrible, isn't it? Sean Hannity Morning Update coming up. After this word for odor exit. Got local stories as well and phone calls if you care to make a comment. But 6:31 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Happy Thursday to you. Top of the hour. Looking forward to talking with Dr. Lisa Manning, the Butler County coroner, on the heroin epidemic we've got going on. Jack Atherton, brilliant man, always wonderful commentary at 7:40. Officers Ron Hughley and Mandy Vineyard are going to be in talking about you being the next Cincinnati police officer. You looking for a job? They're recruiting one final recruit class that we can see within our field division, given the budgeting issues in downtown Cincinnati, so they want to tell you all about that. So between now and then, I do have local stories. If you have a comment you want to make, feel free to call 749-5500 or 800-823-TALK. Ray Tenzing wants the case dismissed. The attorneys are asking for the judge to dismiss his case. And, of course, you remember Ray Tenzing, former University of Cincinnati police officer, shot and killed Samuel DuBose while he drove away during a 2015 traffic stop. Prosecutors are arguing that the man was not in danger when he shot DuBose. And, of course, this incident, highly publicized. Hamilton County prosecutor is alleged to have violated a gag order, allegedly biased potential juries as well. That's what the Tenzing's lawyers are saying. It's because Joe Dieters spoke to local Channel 9 the other day. Channel 9 asked him whether Leslie Giz, the judge, would add lesser charges to the original case. And Joe Dieters suspected that she would. And that was about the size of it. And according to the motion filed by Tenzing's attorneys, Dieters' decision to speak with CPO is a, quote, blatant attempt to influence and bias prospective jurors on the eve of the reporting date, close quote. So you recall Dieters was the first person to prosecute the case. It was a hung jury. He stepped aside. He's got somebody else prosecuting it now. Judge Norbert Nabel was asked about this and whether that motion to dismiss the case will be granted. He said he'd be shocked if it was, mainly because, in spite of the gag order, Dieter's comments were innocuous. A man accused of vandalizing an interracial couple's home last year, spray painting the walls with racist messages and swastikas, has been indicted on federal hate crimes charges. Samuel Whitt, 41, was a tenant of the couple. He was renting the lower level of their East Price Hill home. They evicted him sometime before the incident. And Thanksgiving holiday, while Joe and Pat Jude were visiting their daughter, prosecutors say Whitt broke into the home and caused extensive damages, spray painting the walls with swastikas, racial slurs, and messages like white power. According to the prosecutors, Whitt splattered paint on the walls, stairs, and appliances, poured paint in stove burners, put holes in the walls, tore out carpet, and poured quick-drying concrete into the bathroom drains and toilet. What a jerk. Also accused of removing plumbing traps from sinks, leaving the water running, which, of course, caused extensive damage to the ceilings and floors. Also say he turned on a gas stove and tried to remove the smoke detector above the stove. He's charged with attempted arson, which carries a maximum penalty of 20 years. Also charged with violating the Fair Housing Act through force by intimidating the couple based on their race. 10 years he faces on that one. Already unanimously agreed that he is a jerk. According to Boone County Sheriff's documents, former part-time Cooper High School history teacher Mariana White sent naked pictures to a 17-year-old student. Happened last year. White worked from the school between August 2015 to June 2016. Documents show investigators found White's naked pictures on the student's cell phone, hidden in an app called Photo Vault. Boone County detectives also found screenshots of conversations White had with the student about his shirt coming open during class, having crushes on each other, and getting together to have sexual relations, along with images of and discussing the use of marijuana. Detectives said White told the student, delete the text messages so that no one finds them. Yeah, you can always count on that happening, can't you? Pictures ended up circulating around Cooper High School over a group text with about 14 kids until a parent found them and then reported them. White, charged with using her cell phone to induce a minor to engage in sexual activity and possession of drug paraphernalia, expected in court June 7th. That kind of thing ever happened to you, Taryn, when you were in high school? No, me neither. That's a whole new world out there these days. 635, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Yeah, got a little CBO scoring. Sounds like people are going to die. Democrats are already saying children will die. Question is, why will they die under the Republicans' proposed bill? Get to that in a second. First word for Fasten Pro Roofing. Got a roofing problem? Just 640 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Going to be talking about the heroin epidemic at the top of the hour with Dr. Lisa Mannix, who's the Butler County coroner, and a rather interesting article happened yesterday. Of all places, they found an acre of opium poppy growing in some place called Catawba County, North Carolina. An acre of opium poppy they valued at more than $500 million. $500 million packed into 1 acre? That is one heck of a cash crop. And oddly enough, you think, oh, wow, they're growing opium in the United States? Yeah, only one other site they have found in the United States producing opium or growing it was in California. At least this year. I don't know how many prior ones. I had never heard of this happening before, but an entire acre. And the figure is just mind-blowing. I mean, I don't know how much you can get like an acre of weed, but it ain't $500 million. So that is no wonder they're growing in Afghanistan and Malaysia and Mexico. That is an amazing amount of cash for an acre of land. Anyway, over to the Affordable Health Care Act, which isn't. Remember Barack Obama's signature legislation, the one the Democrats are falling all over themselves trying to save and telling you are going to die if Obamacare gets repealed and is replaced by the Republicans' version? Well, the CBO scored the Republicans' version, and this is going to fuel the narrative that, oh, my God, 23 million are going to be uninsured. That's the headline. 23 million uninsured. It'll cut $119 billion off of our deficit in 10 years. It'll save you a lot of money on your insurance premiums, they're saying, but it's the 23 million people that are going to be uninsured that's got everybody all ginned up and most certainly will bury this. But let's look at the figure. And before we look at that figure, let's look at two other figures that came out. Health and Human Services Department released research yesterday. I believe it was yesterday. Anyway, recently. Confirming that the average premiums under Obamacare in the individual market, these are real figures that you've already experienced, not something made up by the CBO who's trying to read into the future, right? Your average premium has increased 105% since 2013. That's the average. That's in the 39 states where Obamacare exchanges are federally run. That turns into $3,000 for the average family annually. Now, that's average. That means, of course, there's some who are not paying as much, but there are a lot who are paying more than that. And that is a trend brought to you by Obamacare, a 105% average increase in the individual market. What is you keep your insurance, your premium's going to go down $2,500? Wasn't that what Obama said? Well, he had it exactly opposite. It went up $3,000. Yesterday, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City withdrew its Obamacare plans from 2018 in Kansas and Missouri, citing Obamacare losses. In other words, losses brought about because of Obamacare, the legislation. Losses of $100 million, which it said were quite simply unsustainable for the company. That decision leaves 77 of Missouri's 114 counties, including St. Louis, with only one insurer, and 31,000 Missourians in another 25 counties with zero, absolutely no coverage options because of Obamacare. And sadly, Health and Human Services says premiums have increased in Missouri 145% over 4 years. So you have a massive increase in premium if you're lucky enough to get coverage, and now a lot of people can't even get an insurance policy. Now, real news, real information affecting real people under a real piece of legislation that has been passed and in effect since 2010. It's been a colossal Charlie Foxtrot of epic proportions. The focus quite often should be on the reality of that, but you're not going to hear the reality of what happened under Obamacare, what is happening right now, the epic failure. Now you're going to be read the CBO saying that the American Health Care Act, which is the one that was passed in the House and the one that they're tinkering on in the Senate, is going to leave $23 million without insurance. Now, what else is it going to do? Well, it's going to cut taxes by $992 billion. It's going to cut spending by $1.1 trillion. It'll cut the deficit by $119 billion over 10 years. Those are all very good things, all confirmed by the CBO. But it says 14 million fewer people overall. 14 million fewer people will be insured in 2018 compared to Obamacare, and that figure will go up to 23 million by 2026. And that's where the political left goes crazy, right? Now, 14 million are going to be rolling off Medicaid. That program shifted to block grants, which is a mere 17% drop in enrollment after the Obamacare expansion. Point that out. A mere 17% drop in Medicaid enrollment. It went up dramatically. Barack Obama expanded the Medicaid eligibility, right? Governor Kasich embraced it here. A lot of previously uneligible people became eligible. Why? Well, we had the market fall apart. 2007, 2008, we were all going to die. The economy was spiraling out of control. People without jobs. We all lived through it. So the government rushes in, expands the program, and now the Republicans are planning on paring it back. Hey, I thought Obama brought the economy back. We're at 4.4% unemployment. Why do we need an expanded Medicaid? That's the point. You're not killing people. You're putting them back to where they were before the recession hit. God bless America. The balance of beneficiaries, quote unquote, losing coverage. And here's the most fundamental point on all this. When you start hearing 23 million people, they're not going to buy insurance. It will be their choice not to buy it. There's no longer a mandate that you get penalized under the tax code for not buying it. Not that that was enough of a stick to keep people from and get people to buy insurance under Obamacare. They still refused. But you give people a choice. It's not losing coverage. It is their choice not to buy it. The CBO says the penalty for not having insurance will be eliminated. In other words, without the threat of government making you buy insurance or paying a penalty, some people are going to determine it isn't worth it. And that is a rational consumer choice. There's nothing wrong with that. CBO claims that a few million people will use the new tax credit, which you get under the Republicans' version, to buy insurance. But that's not enough of a draw. That's not enough of a carrot to get you to do it, according to the CBO, which means you're going to choose to not buy it. That's a choice. That is not the Republicans taking your insurance away from you. So you got to learn how to address these responses, and you have to learn what the figures actually mean. And I will turn you to and refer you to an excellent op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal today, How to Read an Obamacare Prediction. This points all this out in all its ugly reality. Got an interesting fun fact coming up here in the next segment. Got a short segment to get through. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, 800-823-TALK. Fun fact concerning concealed carry. First word for the Junk King. The Junk King will haul it away. What is it? Everything but hazardous waste. That's what they do. They got great crews. 652, 55 KRCD Talk Station. If you're having a great Thursday, Lisa Mannix, Dr. Lisa Mannix, Butler County Coroner, is going to join us top of the hour with you to discuss the current status of the heroin epidemic. Obviously a huge, huge problem. Jack Atherton, the incomparable Jack Atherton, just a brilliant man. He's going to be on 740 with his commentary. We'll get Jack every couple of weeks now and really look forward to that segment. I hope you do too. Officers from the Cincinnati Police Department in 805, they're recruiting. They want you to be a police officer, and probably your last opportunity in the foreseeable future given the Cincinnati City budget and the mess that that's in. So stick around all morning. And real quick here, speaking of Cincinnati Police, which makes me think of crime, I thought this was an interesting statistic. Being a concealed carry owner and carrier permit owner myself and advocate of concealed carry, I mean, you never know. It's like being a Boy Scout. Be prepared. And if you are a slight of build 5'9.5" guy like me, you can get outmanned. You know, it's the great equalizer. You know, maybe you're a 5'2" petite framed woman. You could get outmanned or womaned too. The gun is a great equalizer. I know this goes without saying, but it's the point of having concealed carry. You can benefit society and protect yourself at the same time, and they don't recreate any, inherent danger in and of themselves as long as you know how to handle one. You don't leave them laying around where children are playing. Duh. Anyway, the reports are the concealed carry permits had the greatest surge ever between 2016 and 2017. They jumped from 14.5 million permit requests or permit holders in May of last year to 15.7 million in May of this year. NRA released data also showing that it's even bigger than that one-year jump. There was a 215% increase in concealed carry permits between 2007 and 2015. Heart of the Obama years. Obama was the greatest gun salesman ever. And, fun fact, what's the corollary statistic? The murder rate and crime rate. During that same period of time, the murder rate dropped 14%, and overall violent crime dropped by 21%. Now, you can say that there's no correlation between the number of concealed carry holders out there and the number of violent crimes and the number of murders. You can carry that belief with you as long as you want. Whether the crime rate's going up or down, if you have a concealed carry, you're in a position to use it and protect yourself. And the more out there and the more word on the street that gets out there among the criminals that, gee, wow, the population is well armed. And right now, I got about a 1 in X chance of actually running into somebody who's going to be shooting at me. I would imagine that although there are some really, really dumb criminals out there who might not take a moment to consider that, there are always going to be those. Have a concealed carry, and you won't have to worry about them either. But maybe, and I think there's something to be said about this, that criminals do give that a little bit of thought. It's like going to a house. There's two houses. One's got a giant dog in it. The other one does not. Which house do you rob? Why take a chance? 655, 55 KRC, the talk station. The heroin problem is beyond anybody's wildest descriptions or beliefs. It's getting worse. I think it's getting worse. At least it seems to be. We'll hear from Dr. Lisa Mannix, Butler County Coroner, on that topic coming up next. I hope you can wait.
Today after Rush.
Take a look inside of
The hate Trump lens. Wow. Take a look at this.
Have a look.
It's almost hard to believe.
On 55 KRC.
It's 7:05. 55 KRC, the talk station. A very happy Thursday to you. Brian Thomas here. Happy to welcome my next guest. A Butler County native, grew up in Westchester, graduated from Lakota High School, earned a medical degree from my alma mater, University of Cincinnati. Went on to do a residency and fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic. You know her as the Butler County coroner, Dr. Lisa Mannix. Welcome to the program, Dr. Mannix. It's great to have you on today. I wish the subject matter was better, but we need to talk about this.
You're right, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. It's not a happy topic, but certainly one that we need to be talking about here in our community.
A lot to talk about, and for no other reason, the benefit of education that we get from raising awareness about this. And let us start, Dr. Mannix. I mean, we've got some crazy statistics we'll get to about the number of increases in drug overdose deaths your office has been dealing with. I know the Hamilton County Coroner's Office, the Warren County Coroner's Office, you go Northern Kentucky, everywhere. Lots of increases in drug overdose deaths, of course, heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, et cetera. Let me ask you this. Let us talk about where the addiction comes from. First off, opioid users and abusers, those who are addicted to opioids, whether they get them on the street or whether their doctor prescribed them, we have a serious opioid addiction problem in the region. That remains to be a case, correct?
That's correct. And certainly, when we look back and we think about prescription opioids, that's really a small percentage of what's going on now because it has just exploded so much more greater than just the prescription.
Yeah, I guess I look at the statistics, though, and from a lawyer's perspective, you're looking for, cause and effect. And I'm looking at the number of sheer prescriptions, and I have a raised jaundiced eyebrow of skepticism at pharmaceutical companies who manufacture enough OxyContin and other opioids to give every man, woman, and child 3 prescriptions or something crazy. It's millions of prescriptions relative to a population that doesn't sound like it should be demanding that much. Have there been steps taken to stop the overprescription, over-manufacturing, over-prescribing, that kind of thing, Dr. Mannix?
Well, sure. And if you think about the issue, right, doctors in our Hippocratic Oath, we, vow to do no harm. And part of our job is to help people in pain. And we have done that. And most of us have done that properly and respectfully over the years. Yeah, maybe there's a few that overprescribe. But remember, when you get a prescription, you have some personal responsibility in that too.
Yes,
and if it says to use as needed for that pain condition that you were prescribed it for, that's how you're to use it, not misuse it or recreationally use it or give it to your friends. So there's personal responsibility in that doctor-patient relationship.
Excellent point. Now, if the opioid addicted are not driving the heroin epidemic, in other words, they're not shifting from opioids over to heroin because of the cost factor, what is driving this increase? Is it kids just saying, hey, I'm going to go try and snort a little bit of heroin on this weekend? Is it people who just don't understand the nature of how addictive it is? Where is it coming from?
Well, I think those are all factors in it. Hopefully it's not kids saying, hey, I'm going to go do drugs this weekend. And, if you look at our demographics, and I know we can get into the statistics, but the people who are dying of these opiate overdoses are roughly 40 years old. So they're not kids. Now, that doesn't mean that the kids aren't using, and that's not where we need to target this idea, the idea that these drugs are addictive, that you don't just start with heroin, but maybe you're recreationally using your Adderall or trying some marijuana or alcohol or whatever it is, that then eventually with the drug dealers that are out there, the sources that people get those drugs from, then they start introducing heroin what was heroin.
And that's a great argument for legalization as far as I'm concerned, because, I don't know anybody who went from alcohol to heroin. Now, if you're buying an illegal drug from your dealer, of course, that dealer is going to have access to a whole variety of illegal drugs. So if you're going over to buy weed, he may offer you cocaine or perhaps the new thing on the block, which is heroin mixed with carfentanil. That is an opportunity that's presented for a drug dealer. But is there really, people buying weed going to just automatically start, I'll give heroin a shot because it's laying right here. There has to be something greater than that, given that it is so unbelievably addictive and deadly.
Well, and, the part of what your drug dealer's selling, I mean, do you really trust them? Do you know what they're giving you? Do they know what you're giving you?
Right, and clearly they don't.
Right. We've seen cases already this year of people who are recreational cocaine users who now have fentanyl in their cocaine. Well, are they producing a greater addiction population, or are they dying because they thought they were snorting cocaine and it's got fentanyl in it? And of course, we've seen the dying part. If they're addicting more people, then that's another group of people down the road that are going to be at risk of dying from these opiates.
Well, let me put it this way, because I'm still trying to figure out where this increase in demand has come from. That perhaps maybe there always was an underlying, heroin problem, but it's only been since the carfentanil, fentanyl, and these other deadly cocktails of mixes have come into the equation that people are now dropping dead because of it?
Well, they're dropping dead because these drugs now are so much more potent. They're so much more dangerous, and they're much cheaper than they were. So there are, granted, again, if you look at our numbers, the range of deaths are from the age 20 to 67. So, it covers the whole gamut. And if there's somebody that maybe did get addicted to their pain meds, and now those are expensive, they're a senior in the donut hole, it's probably cheaper to buy heroin.
Are you finding out, like when you were investigating these deaths, and just by way of statistics, folks, here's the frightening one. In 2012, Butler County alone had 101 drug overdose deaths. 30 of those were heroin or fentanyl related. 2016, 192 drug overdose deaths, 153 of which were fentanyl heroin related. Clearly a huge increase, percentage-wise at minimum, of the heroin fentanyl component. So, again, I guess when you investigate these deaths, when you're looking into it, and I don't know what type of investigation you do, Dr. Mannix, but are you finding out why heroin ended up in that person's system, how they ended up getting on heroin, what their course was? Because, again, I'm trying to find where people go wrong. If it's the opioids that they're addicted to, fine. That's at least there is a legitimate causal link there. Because I don't understand how and again, you could be duped and sold something and take something that you don't know is heroin or fentanyl, but how someone could, knowing how deadly it is and the likelihood that you will die, the idea that you, the coroner, and other coroners are telling people to keep Narcan handy and a buddy to do drugs with out of the fear that you're going to die. All that information's out there. What would lead a person to consciously take this drug?
Right. Well, in our investigations at the Butler County Coroner's Office, we can determine how someone died and what they died from, but the why is difficult, and whether that's drug overdoses or suicides or car crashes or whatever. I mean, the why is definitely difficult. I will tell you one thing that we do see a lot of that maybe doesn't get so much attention is mental health. Right. And addressing mental health from an early stage, whether it's depression, isolation, boredom, that lead people to look for something to ease their pain.
Yes.
It's not just physical pain, but emotional pain, to escape from the world. One of the things that we see that is so sad to me with these drug overdoses, these are not like hospice deaths where the family's gathered around and the person is surrounded by their loved one. These people dying of drug overdoses die alone, or at least they're found alone.
Yes.
Maybe they were doing drugs together, but now they're found alone. So there's a whole kind of social aspect to this, and I think rooted, my personal opinion, in mental health issues that need to be addressed.
And, Dr. Mannix, I'm so happy you brought that up, because at the root of I would argue a majority of drug addiction and alcoholism, I think, is just that. It is people self-medicating. You're depressed, you turn to the drugs to get your brain clear and free of that which depresses you. You got mental health problems, suffer from generalized or chronic anxiety, maybe you're bipolar. All of these things can lead people to seek out alternative forms to cure their problem, and quite often they're dangerous and deadly narcotics. Can you stay, Dr. Mannix? Because what I want to ask you is maybe we can figure out the societal costs on this, but also, do you have any thoughts or theories on how we solve the problem?
Yes, I sure wish I did. And there are lots of community partners out there working on potential solutions.
All right, can you stick around? We'll talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
Great. One more segment with Dr. Mannix. We'll be right back. Got to stop to pay the rent and tell you about Living Well Ohio. LivingWellOhio.com is where you. 7:20 right now, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Happy Thursday to you. Brian Thomas here with Dr. Lisa Mannix, the Butler County Coroner. We're dealing and talking about the heroin epidemic, which is plaguing, if not the entire country, certainly this region has been hit particularly hard. Not quite sure why. Is this, Dr. Mannix, has it been identified as just a trafficking hub of some sort? Because the Midwest here, Ohio and West Virginia, Kentucky, has been walloped by this, more so than a lot of other regions in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, we think about our highway system. Cincinnati and Dayton are identified as among the top 10 cities in the country for this opiate epidemic, and here we are in Butler County, right between those along the highway. And honestly, it's been successful, right? I mean, we've all of a sudden got a lot of people addicted here in Southwest Ohio, and unfortunately, opiate addiction is a potentially fatal disorder, and many of them are dying. It
really is, and it's a costly one. In addition to just the loss of life, that social cost, it carries a real cost in terms of, like, for example, taxing your resources. Again, the statistics I know, you're on pace to accept over 500 cases this year in the coroner's office. And you don't accept every case of death. You only take cases involving, like, suspicion and, like, where drugs or murder or something is suspected, right? Suspicious or sudden in nature. So, and the vast majority of this increase, a 60% increase over the past couple of years, is related to drugs.
Absolutely. Pretty much everything else has stayed the same. Fatal car crashes, which everybody worries about. And we've done a great public campaign on click it and ticket and, speed limits and all that kind of stuff. Butler County only had about 25 fatal motor vehicle crashes last year compared to 192 drug overdose deaths. So, and so we have to look at something like, the auto fatalities or infant deaths. We have a high infant death rate, but we have a great message there, alone on their back in a crib to keep these babies from dying. We obviously need some message, but for drug addiction. But at this point, it is so widespread. So many community partners working on this to try to find, and it won't be just a single message, but we've got to come at this from a multi-layer approach.
Well, and again, Dr. Mannix, that's really why I was pressing earlier to try to figure out how it is that people end up on this. I understand if you're already addicted to opioids, it's an easy shift over. You're already there. Your mind is not clear. You're probably not thinking about death. You have an addiction. You just want to feed it. I get that. But stopping that first try, that to me should be the real goal here. And if doctors are working to help their patients with the opioid issues and they're staying in tune, what can you give the average person, the average parent, the average family member? What kind of advice can you give us? Should we be looking for mental health issues? Are there signs we should be looking for? How do we help out?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, we got to start with the kids, with the generation that's coming through now. It's about finding healthy outlets for your emotions, for your energy, for your pain. All the available treatments that are out there doesn't mean it has to be a pill,
right?
Or a society that likes something that's a quick fix. But I mean, think about how beneficial exercise is for physically, for mentally, emotionally. I mean, things that people can do, and you think, oh, well, that's too easy. Well, that's not the only part of it. But you have to, if you want to be healthy, you have to be healthy, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all those pieces, and address those issues. And that's hard. If you think about our kids today and the folks that are addicted, how can they teach their kids that, right? So as a community, whether from faith-based organizations or, school programs, we've got to instill in these kids that there's a different life, that there are other things, other avenues that they can go to be healthy and happy. And
that for those who are currently addicted, whether it's alcohol or heroin or anything else, that there are treatment plans out there. Dr. Mannix, there are treatment plans that are successful and can work.
There are, but this is not a quick fix. No. So addiction, as with anything, I mean, look at the long-standing alcoholism and people that are in, they're in sobriety for years. I mean, for a lifetime, and that's really what this is. There are treatment centers out there. There are medical bridges that can help with folks, but it's a commitment. It's a lifelong commitment to be sober and to find other avenues to get employed, to have healthy relationships, and that takes time and a lot of support from people. And at this point, many of the addicts have burned their bridges. They've exhausted their families physically and financially, and those families and their community have to stand with them. But we have to have that addict help us and say, I want to get better. I want to get better. You hit the nail on the head. Heroin addiction is so bad that you're right. They have nuked family bridges because typically, and I've heard it so many times, they have already stolen from all the family members. They have begged, borrowed, and steal from all family members, and that's how bad the addiction is. It's so bad that they turn their backs on their own families, the very people that you need to help you get out of the addiction. Dr. Mannix, it is not an easy problem to deal with. I can't thank you enough for spending time with my listeners and me talking about it. Education's the key, at least one of the components in helping people with their mental health. Beyond that, I'll look for any other solution you can offer, Dr. Mannix. Okay, well, we'll all stay in this together. I hope so. Thank you very much for your time again. It's 7:27 right now, 55 KRCD Talk Station. And time for a Rush Limbaugh Morning Update. We got some local stories, a phone call or two if you'd like. We have also Jack Atherton coming on 7:40 with his wonderful commentary. First today on Rush, University of Maryland student has created an international uproar. Oh, no, I can only imagine. Rush Limbaugh next. Going on 7:33, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Brian Thomas here, glad to be. Coming up at 7:40, Jack Atherton with commentary. We hear from Jack every couple of weeks, and he is a brilliant man, and I'm pleased to share the couple of segments of the program with Jack. Between now and then, I'll share the program here with Mike, who's on the phone. Hey, Mike, welcome to the morning show. Happy Thursday to you.
And to you as well.
Thanks, man. What's on your mind?
I have a comment between the conversation between you and the doctor.
Yeah.
I think a lot would help if they just there's a certain responsibility one is to take in their own actions, and all this stuff about do drugs with a buddy and all this kind of stuff like that, and giving him everything, and sometimes you just have to fall on your ass, to be perfectly blunt, to get out of that stuff. I hear you, Mike. I can't disagree with that, and I understand it. But from everything I've read and just looking at the actions of people who are on heroin relative to how they acted before they became addicted, it is impossible to comprehend. Think about this. People doing couples, husbands and wives, overdosing on heroin with their kids in the car. I mean, the idea that you would turn your back and put your children at such jeopardy that you would even entertain the notion of that shows you how bad the drug is. It is beyond the pale that the addiction is overwhelming and all-consuming. I won't argue that.
Well, that's why most people die or end up in jail. Treatment options are out there, Mike, and I'm not going to paint any ridiculous illusions that they're successful. They're not very successful when it comes to heroin addiction, which is, again, Mike, I raise that coupled with the fact that, you don't even know what you're buying. The doctor mentioned cocaine. You're not even looking for heroin. You go in to buy cocaine. It's got fentanyl in it. You're going to drop dead. So that it's tainted, that you're going to get killed one way or another, but that if you seek out heroin, you already know there's a possibility, and a good one, that you're going to drop dead, and yet you take it anyway.
Agreed.
Think about that.
I won't argue that, but I've known many people recover from that.
Sure.
And have been successful at it, but it takes a tremendous desire.
It does.
To recover from that, and that's lies the main problem.
It is the main problem, and again, the other component to that is if you have loving family, they can help you tap into that desire. Even if your desire is not a great one, it's like, come on, we're going to help you get clean. We've got to find it in you where you want to get clean. That's something a compassionate, loving person would really take steps to do. But as the doctor pointed out, and as we know from time and time again, by the time that this person's disease has manifested itself, that person has nuked and burned so many bridges of loved ones, there's no one there with that level of compassion to get them committed to getting into a program and staying into it. It's a vicious, terrible, terrible cycle. I'm not discounting what you say, Mike. There's a hell of a lot of personal responsibility involved, and that's what I truly believe in. I'm libertarian, If you want to take drugs, knock yourself out. The problem is, though, it probably will kill you, and this ripple effect societal cost that's coming down on us all are paying for it. It's just epic, epic bad. There is nothing good to be found in this, and there's no simple solution, clearly. Thanks for the call, Mike. I really appreciate it. 736, Jack Atherton, the incomparable Jack Atherton, coming up next. I hope you can stick around for Jack's commentary. I want to tell you real quickly about Your Wellness Center, because if you're feeling down, a little slowed down, run down, 741 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Brian Thomas here, happy as I always am to welcome what I consider now to be a fairly regular segment with Jack Atherton. We all remember Jack from his days here in local news, and of course he is a wonderful author. I cannot encourage you enough to get over to Amazon.com and read for free his excellent, excellent book, The Real Anchorman's Conservative Manifesto by Jack Atherton. Jack, good to have you back on today.
Thank you, Brian. Morning to you. I heard your great segment with Judge Napolitano that we all look forward to every week.
Oh, man.
And, folks, it was sobering to hear how the judge, who usually gives Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt and then some, is now worried about obstruction of justice.
Yes.
Not just collusion, but also conspiracy, because Trump, he believes, may have tried to shut down investigations.
Yeah.
Of course, the other way to look at this is that after months of investigation, Trump was just saying, come on, I haven't worked with the Russians. There's nothing here. So please go public and say you found no evidence of collusion so I can get on with my agenda. If there was never any collusion, but we're now focused on obstruction, then, Brian, it's like Scooter Libby all over again. When James Comey was Deputy Attorney General before he headed the FBI, Comey appointed his close friend, the godfather of one of Comey's children, Patrick Fitzgerald, to find out who leaked the identity of a CIA agent, Valerie Plame. Early on, Fitzgerald knew that the leaker was Colin Powell's Deputy Secretary of State, a guy named Richard Armitage. But Fitzgerald kept investigating for years, and he finally wound up prosecuting an advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, Scooter Libby. Not because Libby was behind the leak, but because Libby allegedly committed perjury during the investigation, just like Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
No crime, just a cover-up. But, Brian, what I'd really like to remind everybody this morning is how incredible the whole idea is that Vladimir Putin and the Russians would have wanted to see a President Donald Trump instead of a President Hillary Clinton.
Okay, let's pause for a moment because we're going to build this up because this ought to be good. Jack, this is exactly, I've sort of been asking this self out loud and to myself, what in the hell were the Russians thinking that they could gain with Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton? What was in their best interest to do this? So I built it up now, Jack. Answer that question.
Well, the answer is that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were Putin's best friends, for a start. And I said all this on the air as it was happening and got in big trouble years ago. Obama and Clinton gave Putin a reset button and removed our nuclear defense against Russia from both Poland and the Czech Republic. Then Obama and Clinton gave Russia 20% of America's uranium reserves. And by the way, why isn't anyone investigating the money, all the money that made its way into the Clinton Foundation?
Amen.
Obama and Clinton undermined a longtime U.S. ally in Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, when they backed instead the radical Muslim Brotherhood. And Obama and Clinton welcomed Putin himself into Iran and Syria, where, of course, they still are. Worst of all, Obama let Putin seize Crimea. It was the first hostile takeover of territory in Europe since World War II. Trump did not win because of Russia. Trump won because he had an agenda, and Hillary Clinton had none. Trump promised to destroy the kind of radical Islamists who just murdered those children and their parents in Manchester. I'm a father, you are too, Brian.
Yeah.
To see the faces of those children is just the worst.
Horrific.
Trump, the supposed Muslim hater, was just applauded for his tough anti-terror stance by more than 50 Muslim countries at that meeting in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we didn't hear a whole lot about that either, did we, Jack?
No, we didn't. Trump also vowed to end illegal immigration, to replace Obamacare, which we heard just yesterday again has more than doubled premiums since 2013. Trump promised to bring back good-paying jobs for the middle class by cutting taxes and needless regulations, especially the ones that are crippling small business. Trump's enemies cannot win any arguments about policy, so they don't argue policy. You remember that great saying by Carl Sandburg? If you can't argue the facts, argue the law. If you can't argue the law, pound the table and yell like hell.
Yes.
Well, they're pounding the table about Russian collusion and now failing that. Obstruction of justice.
So, Jack, are you suggesting that the Russians didn't want Donald Trump to be president, that they actually, if they were colluding or had, and I got to say, Jack, that I have to believe that the Russians did whatever the hell they wanted and what was in their best interest. We would do the same thing. We do the same thing.
Right, in Israel. And
influencing elections is what we do.
Right.
So why are you saying that?
The Russians started doing this, Brian, in 2015. They had no idea that Donald Trump even was going to run for president. I think as the election approached, they believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and they wanted to embarrass her.
Wow.
Whether or not they actually were the source of all those WikiLeaks, I have no idea. You know, Julian Assange claims they weren't. I don't know that you believe Julian Assange. But all of this, okay, has to be investigated. But let's never forget that Trump's enemies cannot win any arguments about policy, so they don't argue policy. Donald Trump may have been as undisciplined as he often is when he talked with James Comey and other investigators. But was he trying to shut down evidence of a crime, the way Richard Nixon destroyed evidence of the Watergate burglary that actually had happened? Or was Trump simply asking people to tell the truth, that there was no collusion? Judge Napolitano is worried, so I am too. We'll have to see where this leads. Meantime, one thing is clear. Trump and the Republicans were elected because they had a real agenda to make America great again and save the middle class. So they had better pass health care reform, tax reform, and immigration reform, or the voters will toss them out anyway.
Amen to that. Jack Atherton, awesome hearing from you as always. Love what you have to say. And again, I'll remind my listeners, jump over to Amazon.com. Just type in Jack Atherton's name. You'll find The Real Anchorman's Conservative Manifesto. It's a wonderful book. Jack, thanks again for your time. I'll look forward to the next segment.
Thank you, Brian.
As always, 7:48 right now, 55 KRC Talk Station. Chip's on the phone. Chip, you're next, man, if you want to hang on for just a couple more minutes here. I got mentioned Bluford Jackson for to pay the bills, and I'm happy to do that because if you... $7:52 at 55 KRC, the talk station. It is Friday Eve. Well, rainy, wet out there, but that's okay. I'll take a Friday Eve. Coming to the top of the hour after the news, officers Ron Hughley and Mandy Vineyard from the Cincinnati Police Department are here with a job opportunity for you, working in law enforcement for the Cincinnati Police Department. My sister's getting ready to retire. She has been with the Cincinnati Police Department for, I think, like roughly 25 years. A wonderful career it's been for her, and if you're interested in a great, long career like that, just hang around for after the top of the hour news. In the meantime, let's go to the phones. I got time for Chip's comment. Chip, you've been hanging out for a comment about the heroin situation. Welcome to the 55 KRC Morning Show. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for taking my call. You were talking about how the family showing love to a heroin addict, and it's kind of hard to do that. They call it a family disease.
Yep.
And that's why Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, had his wife start Al-Anon. Narcotics Anonymous has No-Anon. And it's a family disease. If everybody gets happy, it's a lot easier to stay sober. I know this for a fact because I've been sober over 21 and a half years.
Good for you, Chip.
And my family's been in Al-Anon 28 years.
Good for you. What is the recipe for that success, Chip? I mean, in your world, is it just the working together, the collection of the whole family working together to overcome the addiction?
That's correct. And let me give you an example.
Please.
I've sponsored a lot of guys over the years, and I try to get their family in Al-Anon and No-Anon, but sometimes they don't want to go. And what happens is the alcoholic or the heroin addict leaves me, and they go home and they get in an argument with their wife or their mother or their dad, and they go back out and use. And that's the key. It's a family disease, Brian, and please keep talking. It's a family disease. There's literature that describes this in Al-Anon, that it's a family disease. And if the whole family gets in recovery, and there's a lot of places where AA and NA actually meet, and they have Al-Anon and No-Anon in one side of the building, and they have the AA and NA in the other side of the building, and that's why the family gets recovery. And more people need to talk about family recovery. And the success rate goes from 8%. Now, I've worked in care units.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from 8% to 50% or better when the family participates in the recovery.
Wow.
Because the family gets better. The family gets happy.
Yep. You know what? It really makes perfect sense, Chip. And to the extent those family members have been slighted by, have been ripped off from that loved one that's now,
correct.
You got to get over that to help everybody in the equation. There's going to be a lot of hearts broken. Chip,
that's correct.
A wonderful success story, Chip. I certainly will continue talking about this problem. I don't want to see anybody on this stuff ever. I want it eradicated. I want people to get well, and the only way to get well is to continue to talk about it and educating people, and hopefully encouraging families like yours, Chip, to work together for the good of everyone. Thank you for your story, Chip.
Brian, thank you for talking to me today.
Appreciate it, man. And the best of luck on your ongoing addiction. 755 KRC, the talk station. We're going to get you a job. Law enforcement career. It's available at Cincinnati Police Department. They want to tell you about it, so don't go away.
News updates to stay informed. Traffic and weather reports to make plans. The right tools for your day on 55 KRC, the talk station.
Just shy of 8:06 at 55 KRC Talk Station. A very happy Thursday. Call it Friday Eve. I like to. Getting geared up for Fridays on the 55 KRC Morning Show. Tomorrow, a special edition, in addition to everything else we have going on. Of course, Ron Wilson, stuff and things going on in the 8 o'clock hour downtown Cincinnati. We're going to talk about the Beverly Hills Supper Club tragedy. It's the 40th anniversary, and the two guys that wrote the book on it. That place got burned down. That was not aluminum wiring. That was a mob job. And I'll have those guys on tomorrow to tell you about it. I'm convinced. Anyway, they've convinced me. Anyhow, without further ado, I've got a job opportunity for you if you are interested in a wonderful, wonderful career, and I mean that sincerely, in law enforcement. Yes, the Cincinnati Police Department is going to be starting another recruit class, and you are eligible to apply. And there are some whys and wherefores and specifics on that, and I have in-house PO, Police Officer Mandy Vineyard, and Police Officer Ron Hughley. They're both here to talk about what a great job it is and to let you know all about it. Ron, Mandy, great to have you in the studio.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning. Doing really well. As you both know, my sister is Lieutenant Lisa Thomas with the Cincinnati Police Department. She is like 2 steps away from retirement.
She is.
Currently running the academy. Correct. Finishing her out her career in a non-lethal capacity. So I was very happy that she could do that. But she's retiring, so there's one spot open. You obviously have attrition naturally with people retiring or just leaving to go to other forces. And there's always a need to replace those officers. Now, right now, what are the numbers? Where are we in terms of the numbers of police officers right now? And how many people are going to be in this next class?
We're probably just short of 1,000 now. There's currently a class in session that graduates in June, and there's 24 in that class.
Okay.
There is a class to start in December, which there's supposed to be 35 in that class. This upcoming exam in August is actually for 2018.
Oh, for 2018?
Yes, sir.
So you're telling me the December class, you already got the recruits for that one?
They aren't picked yet.
They're not picked?
We're working on that process now.
Okay, and how does the process work? You sign up for, you enroll to take the exam.
Correct.
You take the exam.
Correct.
assuming you pass, then there's an additional weeding out that the police department goes through with those eligible candidates?
Once you pass the written test, then you move on to the physical agility test.
Oh, okay.
And you have to pass that. And that is sit-ups, push-ups, and a 300-meter dash.
Okay.
And then if you pass that, then you move on to the background investigation.
Well, before we get to the background investigation, let's talk about sit-ups and push-ups. I know what a 300-meter dash is. Now, is there a minimum time you got to complete a 300-meter run in?
It's done by age.
Okay.
So if you're a little bit older, you would have a little bit more time.
Well, of course.
So,
that's not to say that older people aren't in better shape than some of the younger people these days, but
that is very true.
I get it.
Correct.
But these are not overwhelming physical standards. I mean, you're gonna get the people in shape when they get to the academy. I know you guys run them through exercise and a rigorous training routine, but how many push-ups, how many sit-ups? Because there's a guy out there right now going, I don't know, man.
Well, it could range anywhere from 17 to 35.
Okay,
depending on the age and gender.
Well, that's certainly easable
and
for a
sit-up.
sit-up.
That's in a, is it 2 minutes?
1 minute.
A 1 minute period, though.
Okay. Well, I know. I'm 51. I can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And there isn't much of an age cutoff for this job, is there? When I remember Chief Stryker, he used to sit in here and he would look at me and say, you want to come be a police officer? We could use you. Because he knows I know how to shoot. I've been through the FAT simulators a bunch of times. I can handle those scenarios, and I could obviously meet the physical fitness requirements and the shooting requirements. He's like, you be a cop. At the time, I was in my mid-40s, or early 40s.
So you're going to take this test, right?
No,
okay.
Not yet. It depends on iHeartMedia. Okay, if I'm told not to come back, maybe I will.
Yeah, there is no ceiling on age.
There isn't.
No,
and
just
so,
the minimum,
right.
21.
And I know that there
Or
have been
about to
some
turn 21.
very successful officers who started later in life. So I just wanted to get the word out there. So if you think this is like a 20-year-old or 22-year-old or 5-year-old's job, no. I mean, they want seasoned people, and I think that adds a really important element to community relations. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch on with you two, because my understanding is, and perception is different than reality, but you have this ever since Ferguson and, hands up, don't shoot nonsense. And, of course, we've had problems in the past here with the riots. Overall, it looks as though society's view of law enforcement has gone down. There's been a lot more police shootings across the nation. I mean, where officers are shot at. That's got to be driving some eligible candidates away. Have you felt that or experienced that?
I think because of social media and things getting out there before facts are necessarily put out. And, that news is always in your face. And you can get it anywhere on your phone. It's constant on your watches.
Yeah.
It's constantly in your face. Whereas before, you didn't really have that. So, like you said, I think perception has changed. Reality is that the job is the same. The support for the police department is the same. But because of the in-your-face media coverage of things,
you tend to go straight to the bottom, the sulliest of details in one remote corner of the universe. That becomes how all law enforcement agencies are, and they're universally condemned. I mean, that's just the left's mantra. But I wanted my listeners to hear firsthand from you, and and remind them about Cincinnati and how it is viewed by the rest of the nation as far as law enforcement and community relations go. We are without peer. Correct?
Correct. We try our best to be a model for other agencies around the country. Our training is top notch. We try to maintain a standard for current events and current trends in training, so that we give our officers every new advantage that there is in terms of safety and shoot and don't shoot scenarios.
Right, and I understand that aspect, but you can have all the training in the world, and and I know we're a model police department. The collaborative agreement obviously had a good impact on working with the community, and the community has a better outlook on the police department. But without community support, all the training in the world doesn't make you necessarily feel safer on the job if you think everybody in the community hates you and is out to get you. That's the part I want to look at, because that's not the case here.
Correct.
I want to encourage people to not think that they're going to be out in an environment where they're going to be spit at and shot at every minute because everybody in the neighborhood hates them. That's just not it.
No, it's not. And for the most part, the job is a social work type of job. You know, the arrest part comes in, you know, a certain percentage, but for the most part, we're social workers in uniform with a gun and a badge. So we're out there to help people, and that's our sole purpose, is to help people and try to get people advice or get them to the next phase in their life where they can live a good life.
And it's funny you bring that up because it reminds me of a story from Tuesday. We had our first responders, and salute to those in uniform, such as yourselves here at the studios, and quite a few members of the Sheriff's Department were here. And I'm not going to mention his name, but on that very note, he ran into someone who came up to him at one point. He said, "I know you. You pulled me over on 71, or you pulled me over on Montgomery Road, or wherever the sheriff was patrolling." And the deputy's first question to him was, "Did you have kids in the car?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "And you didn't get a ticket for me either, did you?" And he said, "Do you remember this?" He goes, "It was a few years ago." He goes, "No, I don't give tickets to people with the kids in the car unless it's something outrageous. If you're just speeding, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you to go buy your kids some ice cream. I'm not going to give you a ticket. I'm letting you go with a warning. Slow it down for their safety and for yours. Go buy them ice cream." And the reason I do that, he said, I'm not interested in giving tickets. I don't want to give them. And none of us really do. That's not our job. Our job is public safety. And by sending that guy down the road without a ticket, he feels relieved. He probably will buy his kids some ice cream because it's a hell of a lot cheaper. He got off.
Right.
And if I gave him the ticket, I know as soon as I'm walking back to the roll, he's going to roll his windows up. He's going to be angry. He's probably going to be yelling at the kids, and it's just going to make a bad situation worse, and with no ultimate benefit to anybody. And when I heard that, I thought, what a beautiful way of looking at law enforcement. And I know that to be more the general rule for most officers than he's as if he's the minority in the situation. He's not. I mean, you agree, generally speaking, that's the attitude.
Sure. Obviously, we're seeing people on the worst day of their lives a lot of times.
Yeah.
And we want to leave them no worse than they were when they met us.
Right.
And in most cases, I'd like to leave the person that I'm dealing with in a better situation than when I first met them. So even if I have to arrest them or I have to give them a ticket, I don't want any of those individuals to ever be able to say, well, this officer was this, this, and this.
Right.
Yes, I got arrested, but you know what? She was nice.
Nice, did her job, and I deserve to get arrested. There's
Right.
got to be a little component of that in there.
Right.
If you're wrongfully arrested, that's different.
Right. And thankfully, our police academy, like I said, it is top notch. It is one of the best in the country. And
Well, hold that thought. We're out of time in this break. I want to take another segment with you, and I want to talk about what people will, after passing the test, I want to find out what the next process, but what the academy's like, and also you can tell them what they're going to make as a first-year police officer as well, because salary is important. You get benefits. I know you got a pension, and not many jobs have a pension anymore, so this is a very good job we're talking about here. Don't go away. More with police officers Vineyard and Hughley right after this word for advanced patient imaging, bringing free market principles to medicine, advanced patient imaging. Doing 8:21 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Happy Thursday to you. Oh, I'm so pleased to be here today. I got cops in the house, which is always a wonderful thing. And today my cop friends are Police Officer Ron Hughley and Police Officer Mandy Vineyard. They want you to come work for the Cincinnati Police Department, and there is a way to do that. All you need to do is sign up. First, you need to enroll, and you have until July 31st to sign up to enroll, and that will get you into the August 19th exam. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Good. My notes are accurate. Enrollment, easy. Go to Cincinnati Police website, I suppose. You sign up, and you're on your way. They'll tell you when the exam is. Show up for the exam. And then, if you pass let's real quick here. What are we having a test on in the exam? If I'm not a police officer yet, what are you testing me on? What written or what questions are asked in the exam?
Well, we used to do civil service tests.
Uh-huh.
We actually have a new company this time that we're working with.
It's general knowledge then?
General knowledge, yes.
Okay.
Common sense type stuff.
Okay, all right.
It's obviously a lot of reading They look at your writing skills, things.
It'd be
like
a college SAT kind of test. The general knowledge, logic and reason problems.
There may be a report type of scenario where they give you a scenario and want you to write a report to see what it looks like.
All right, but you don't need to know the law and law. You teach that in the academy, and I know you're wonderful at teaching the academy. So, all right, all you need to do is have life experience to take the exam. Now, assuming you pass the exam, then comes the which part now? That's the background.
Agility.
Oh, the physical agility. Okay, sit-ups, push-ups, run 300 yards. Fine, we got that covered. Then comes the background check. Now, do you do a background check first and then do a lie detector test, or how does that work?
The lie detector is given throughout the background process.
Oh, really?
But as you know, cops are inherently nosy.
Yeah.
And so background investigators are even nosier than most.
Oh, sure.
So we really dig in there pretty deep.
Well, I would hope so. You mean you're going to be a member of law enforcement.
Right.
You don't want any dicey characters in there.
Right. So, if we find something prior to the polygraph that draws some red flags, then obviously we'll address that.
All right, well, let's talk one thing that maybe a lot of people out there, and more prevalent, people out there smoking weed. It's all over the place. Does that keep you from being a police officer these days? I know used to, period, you just kind of were out, right?
It's not a definite.
Okay.
It could. It just depends on the time frame.
How long it's been since you smoked your last weed? That
Correct.
would really what it comes down to.
Correct.
All right. Well, if you are inclined to engage and imbibe in the consumption of illicit substances, probably not a job you're going to be looking for. Because, of course, if you pass all this and you get into the job, you're not going to be able to do it because they do random drug tests on a regular basis in the Cincinnati Police Department, and we're glad that they do. You guys are out there with firearms and cars and guns, and, yeah, we don't need drug guys. All right. So you got the background test. I presume you're looking for crimes, organized, working with ISIS and things like that.
Right.
If past all that, you get into the academy. How long are you in the academy?
The academy is 28 weeks long, and there's a selection process. Once we get an eligibility list of all of the remaining candidates, we sit down with the chief, and the chief makes his selections based on however many we're going to select for the class, whether it's 35 or 60. And then we go from there. After those people are selected, we make phone calls to them, telling them, congratulations, you were selected. And they'll get a conditional offer letter in the mail, emailed rather. And they sign that, and it states, yes, they accept, or no, they decline. And then at some point, they're set up for a medical exam, which they do have to pass a medical.
Of course.
Which is a drug screen, stress analysis, vision, hearing, the normal
anything
type
you'd
of
expect.
physical. And just shortly before they actually complete that and actually have to go into the academy, now the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy mandates that they successfully pass their version of the physical ability, which is push-ups, sit-ups, and a mile and a half, before they can actually be accepted into the academy. They used to just do that at the end to graduate.
All right.
Now they have to do it at the beginning.
Well, and I know firsthand, since my sister currently is running the police academy, that once you're in the academy, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay in the academy, and that some people just can't cut the mustard when it comes to the physical requirements, and some people can't handle the workload because you got to have some smarts. You got to learn the law. You got to learn all the police code. But it is a career.
Yes.
And Ron, you've been with the police department how long?
27 years now.
All right. And Mandy?
10 years.
10 years. And Ron has no intention of retiring. You said he's sticking around forever. He's already 60. And Mandy, you enjoy the job.
I do. I love my job.
Your family has no problem with it.
No, I have a very supportive husband. My parents, when I first came on, obviously they worry for your safety,
sure.
But very supportive. And I've been very, very lucky.
Well, and I know just from firsthand experience through my sister, she has enjoyed her career. It's had some ups and downs. There is some tragedy you're going to see. It's not necessarily an easy job, but it is certainly a rewarding one. And trust me, you're going to have the best stories to tell of any job ever. I mean, seriously, you guys are like come on, cop stories. They're always great. You guys had the best stories. I can't thank you enough. What I'll do is I'll encourage my listeners to get right over to the Cincinnati Police Department's webpage. I'm sure there's a link right there that'll tell you how to sign up for the exam. Enroll it. You got until the 31st of July. Get the exam under your belt, and you're on your way. Great. Be safe out there, and thanks for coming in.
Thank
and
you.
I wish you the best on these couple of recruiting classes. kind of it flies in the face of what sort of we've been led to believe by the city manager, but I'm glad to see you're still hiring. Don't go away, folks. You got some local stories to go. I'll take phone calls. You got a phone call you want to make, 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone or 800-823-TALK. First, I want to tell you about Terry's Turf Club. They're open today. They're open 8:32 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday, and hope you can tune in tomorrow. The anniversary of the Beverly Hills Suffer Club we're going to be talking about, and as I pointed out, I've interviewed the guys that wrote the book on that tragedy, and man, it stinks to high hell, and I'm reminded of that so much because I have this story about Stan Chesley here. Of course, Stan Chesley cut his teeth convincing the jury that it was aluminum wiring that caused that problem, and I don't believe that for a minute. When you hear about the details, the behind the scenes, the completely botched fire investigation, the total cover-up. I mean, they bulldozed that place within 24 hours of it burning down without an adequate fire investigation, and politicians were involved in that too. Just stinks to high heaven. On that note, I'll give you the phone number here if you want to make a call and comment, 749-5500, pound 550, AT&T phones, or 800-823-TALK. And with that, I go to local stories. And let's start with Stan Chesley. Protesters were out in front of Hamilton County Courthouse yesterday protesting Stan Chesley and accusing him of cheating them out of their settlement. A dozen people or more stood outside the courthouse screaming, "We want justice," and signs reading, "Stan Chesley is not above the law." Of course, 2016, he lost an appeal and was ordered to pay a portion of $42 million owed in a lawsuit over the fen-phen drug. It's after a lower Kentucky court found he breached his fiduciary duty to his clients. In other words, he owed the money to them. He did not give it to them. Those clients turned protesters now angry because they say it's taken too long to receive their settlements. In fact, one of the protesters had some real problems. Evelyn Hopkins suffers from a variety of illnesses, including having primary pulmonary hypertension disease, the proximate cause of which was apparently the fen-phen drug, which was litigated, right? Fen-phen caused problems with heart. That's why Stan Chesley sued the manufacturers. The harmed people, like Evelyn Hopkins, were supposed to get compensation for the damages, and she's standing around wondering where they are. She's got a pacemaker and stents in her heart, as well as a leaking valve. She needs that money to take care of herself and her family. She and her husband battling cancer and are not able to work. Chesley, parenthetically, disbarred in 2013. Two Claremont County men and a 14-year-old girl in their harbored a 14-year-old girl in their apartment, and this is so sick. Coerced her into engaging in sex acts so they could create child pornography. It's according to prosecutors. The guy's name's 25-year-old Eric Zinn Ho and 27-year-old Brian Matthew Otero, and indicted in federal court on charges of conspiracy to sex traffic children and conspiracy to produce child porn. Teen girl reported missing in Indiana, found in their Union Township apartment. Otero and Ho arrested May 4th and are in custody, scheduled to be arraigned U.S. District Court, Cincinnati. According to the police at the time of the arrest, the girl had been missing for 4 days when she was found in the East Point Apartments in Union Township. Ho admitted to engaging in sexual conduct with the girl while inflicting physical pain, and that Otero watched. Otero, parenthetically, facing a rape charge in Eau Claire, Wisconsin already. Conspiracy to traffic children, a crime punishable by up to life in prison. Conspiracy to produce child porn carries a mandatory minimum of 15 years in prison, up to 30 years. And we can only hope that these two guys get the maximum and that they will enjoy their stay in the prison, where prisoners hate molesters of children. Had it on great authority, I always like to bring this up in case you're thinking about it. Sheriff's Department, they have it on good information since they run the jail, that in spite of the fact that those are criminals in the jail and they're not very good people, often murderers and thugs and drug dealers, that they're quite often family members and they have children of their own. And when you are a molester of children, it's as if you are molesting their children. So they let you know about it in prison regularly. Enjoy your stay, guys. You earned it. 836, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Tom's on the phone. Tom, hold on a moment. If anybody else wants to call, 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone. And we have a Montana congressman confirming that early voting may be a bad idea. I'll get to that after this word for CME Sewer. CME Sewer, fixing sewer lines from the inside out. You don't have to... 840, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Happy Thursday. Phone number 749-5500, 800-823-TALK, or pound 550 on your AT&T phone. Real quick before I get to Tom, who's got a comment. Josh just emails me. He said, I'm confused. Dan Hills has been complaining that working conditions suck. They need new District 5, new radios, and blah, blah, blah. Now you have these two talking about how everything's great. No, don't confuse issues, Josh. The job is a good one. Aspects of it can be fixed, like the radios. There's no reason the Motorola radios shouldn't work. That doesn't have anything to do with how happy a police officer is overall with his or her career. It's a bump in the road that needs to be fixed. Of course they got to do that. District 5, yes, the building is in dilapidated shape. So if you got to work there, that might suck, but being a police officer doesn't suck. It's at a point they've got to address. It's his job. He represents the police department. He is their mouthpiece, and if he doesn't elevate these things, they probably won't get attention. I have never heard Dan Hills say the job sucks or that he doesn't like being a police officer. Read and listen before you write and send me things like that. That's just ridiculous, Josh, and you know it. On the phone is Tom. Tom, welcome to the morning show, and a very happy Thursday to you.
Good morning, Brian. I just wanted to pass along to your sister. When I used to be on second shift down at the municipal garage, I got to meet a lot of police officers and everything, working on their cars, fixing lights, whatever.
Yeah.
And she was one of the kind ones and everything that would bring me a White Castle coffee in occasionally and everything, get me hooked on that stuff. And so, if she remembers me and everything from being on second shift for 22 years down there and then going out to District 2 and that, I just want to thank her and all the other police officers that, stood by all the mechanics down there that took care of their vehicles and that. And I was, basically, by myself at night with police cars and fire trucks. But thank her for being one of the kind ones.
I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you for calling and sharing your experience with her. And also, you illustrate it's a teamwork effort. Yes, the police officers are out there, but without guys like you, Tom, keeping those vehicles going, we'd have a real problem on our hands. There's so many elements to police work, and you're one of the unsung heroes behind the scenes, Tom, and I can't thank you enough for what you did for my sister and everybody else on the Cincinnati Police Department, keeping those vehicles going. And thanks again for the call, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day. Hey, now, I'm going to ask you a question here, going away from police department, and ask you if early voting is a good idea. And you probably know where I'm going to go. This is a story that has been number one with a bullet all day. It's because of what happened yesterday. The Republican candidate in Missoula, Montana, he's been charged with assaulting a journalist. Anyhow, of course, talking about Greg Gianforte. He was winning. He was ahead. He had the endorsements of all the local newspapers. Specifically the Billings Gazette, the Missoulian, and the Helena Independent Record, which I know you all get a hard copy subscription of too. Every one of them pulled their support for him after this fight. Ben Jacobs, a reporter for The Guardian, said the episode occurred during an interview at Mr. Gianforte's campaign headquarters. Jacobs said Gianforte body slammed him when he was asked about a question about the Republican health care bill. Fox News was there. They saw the encounter, and, of course, they posted it on their website. Journalists described Gianforte as punching the reporter. According to the Fox News account, as Gianforte moved on top of Jacobs, he began yelling something to the effect, I'm sick and tired of this. Apparently, Gianforte became agitated when asked about the CBO's fiscal assessment of the Republicans' legislation out of the House to get rid of Obamacare. I got a word on that, too. I'll give you that in the next segment. But Gianforte apparently sidestepped the question, and according to the audio recording the episode, Jacobs posted, he asked the reporter to speak with his spokesman. When the Jacobs persisted in asking the question, that's when he blew his stack, saying, I'm sick and tired of you guys. Last time you came in, you did the same thing. Get the hell out of here, get the hell out of here, he can be reported saying. Jacobs responding, you just body slammed me and broke my glasses. Again, Gianforte screaming, get the hell out of here. He sent his spokesman out to answer the calls for a statement, and the statement said, after asking Jacobs to lower the recorder, Jacobs declined. Greg then attempted to grab the phone that was pushed in his face. Jacobs grabbed Greg's wrist and spun away from Greg, pushing them both to the ground. Incidentally, it's weird because Gianforte is not heard on the recording asking Mr. Jacobs to get rid of the recorder or lower it. Now, I asked this question about early voting because according to the news reports, the race is today. Today's the day they're voting. Now, his opponent, the Democrat Quist, was behind. Big question mark now whether Gianforte's actions are going to cost him the election, and it wouldn't surprise anybody if they did. But statistically, they figure they know how many overall votes are going to be cast. Like we do that every year. They're expecting 20% turnout. They expect 50% turnout. So they have expectations on turnout. As of right now, already half of the votes have been cast. They were cast in early voting. So if you were, I don't know, efficient, wanted to get it done early, you cast your vote for Gianforte, you may have a problem on your hands now because you can't unring that bell, even though you might not want him to be elected anymore. That's why I always wait till Election Day to cast my vote. You never know what's going to happen. And on that CBO scoring, so I got a little fun fact you need to take with you when you go and you have to deal with your left-wing people who said that the Republicans are killing babies. That next. First word for Cervati Pastry Shops. Real quick here on Cervati's. The best. I mean, I could end... It's 8:51. 55 KRC, the talk station. I want to thank Taryn covering for Joe Strucker today. Joe Strucker took a day off to be with I think his girls are last day of school or something today. Anyway, family-related activities for Joe, and I hope he's having fun. Taryn always doing a great job covering for Joe. Appreciate that, my friend. And real quick here, because you're going to hear it, this is the reason for that goofy congressman's tirade yesterday. He got asked about this replacement for the Affordable Care Act. CBO says 23 million people are going to lose their coverage. And that's just not true. They're not losing anything. I'll get to that in just a second. First off, when you're responding to your liberal friends who are screaming about babies dying in the street and 23 million people losing coverage, first off, remember, where are we right now with Obamacare? 105% increase in individual premiums on average since 2013 in those states where Obamacare exchanges are federally run. 39 states have experienced, on average, 105% increase just since 2013. That translates to more than $3,000 a year for the average family. You have seen more health insurance companies pull out of markets. Just the other day, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City withdrew Obamacare plans for 2018 in Kansas and Missouri. They were losing over $100 million, which they, of course, called unsustainable for the country or for the company. Now, that's going to leave 77 out of Missouri's 114 counties, including St. Louis, with only one insurer, i.e. no competition, more expensive, and about 31,000 Missourians in another 25 counties with no coverage options at all. And in Missouri alone, premiums have gone up 145% on average. So that's failure illustrated in just two fun facts. That is the reality we're living in right now. Now, over to the Obamacare, or rather the replacement from the Republicans. CBO confirms a couple of positive things. One, it'll cut taxes by $992 billion. It'll cut spending by $1.1 trillion, and it will reduce the deficit by $119 billion. All positive stuff. But here's the bad news. And this is where the left starts pulling its hair out, and for no reason. 14 million fewer people will be insured in 2018. 14 million fewer people. That'll go up to 23 million in 2026. All right. Where does that figure come from? 14 million people would roll off of Medicaid because that program was expanded when we were during the heat of the recession, 2007, 2008, right? They expanded Medicaid to allow more people to get on because we were all in a miserable state and nobody had a job. Hey, unemployment's 4.4%. Why do we need the expansion anymore? Those folks who were able to care for themselves prior to the expansion of Medicaid should be able to care for themselves now. So let's put those aside. They should be able to get an affordable policy because there'll be more flexibility under the Republicans' program to buy something that is affordable. Second, who's losing coverage? Now, if 14 million people are being rolled off Medicaid, what's the balance? The 23 million minus 14? Those folks just aren't going to enroll in insurance. The CBO points out because the penalty for not having insurance would be eliminated. So, without the threat of government insurance mandating you and penalizing you for not buying it, people make the choice to not buy. They make the choice under the Republican bill to not take the tax incentive and buy. It is their choice to not purchase insurance. No one's losing anything. 8:55, 55 KRC, the talk station. Don't go away. I got Glenn Beck program coming up next tomorrow, the anniversary of the Beverly Hills Supper Club. We're going to talk about that. And, of course, Ron Wilson and stuff and things to do in and around downtown Cincinnati. And, naturally, at 6:30, Tech Friday with Dave Hatter. Thanks again, Taryn, for your help today, man. Again, Glenn Beck is next. So stick around.